Hey everyone, I have a very special show that I have been thinking about doing for a month now, and I found the person that I wanted to be on the channel with me for this episode. So before we get into it, let's welcome her to the show. Let's welcome Lauren Clugston to the show. How you doing, Lauren?
Good. I'm so excited for this episode. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I interview probably four people a week. So over the last 52 weeks, it's been about 200 people. And there was a very short list. You were at the top of three, and when you said yes, I'm like, all right, this is going to be good. So what this episode is my book, One Rental at a Time, came out a year ago today. And something I knew I wanted to do was get somebody experienced in the business to obviously read it and then ask me questions, because I wrote it to help people. And I thought, well, why don't we have somebody interview me about the book, who's read it, who's in the business, who could ask me harder questions than a newbie. So that's what I was thinking. What do you think?
Oh, hard questions. All right. I'll see if I live up to that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can introduce yourself, remind everybody what you do, and then I'm just gonna wait for you.
This is exciting. Get you on the other side this time. So everyone, yeah, I'm Lauren. My husband and I, Kyle, are on the Instagram account Rentals to Wealth. We do long-term buy and hold properties and are aspiring to be like Michael one day. So always love talking to him. But as he said, this is his 1 year anniversary of the book being published. And I have read it twice now. I found it that great. And I recommend it to people all the time. So now that I finally get to speak to the author more directly about it and answer some questions, I mean, how about a softball question? What inspired you originally to write this book?
So I remember going to work my last day, because I didn't expect it to be my last day, right? I went in, I loved my job. I had planned to work till I was 50. I was 45 at the time, in sales, which was my profession. Every year there's a rejuggling of accounts, quota, who you report to, all of that. And I was paired up with an individual that I didn't trust, I didn't respect. He frankly thought I was an egomaniac and, type A, and he didn't like me, I didn't like him. And the conversation by 9:30 had deteriorated to the point that it was either him or I. And I remember thinking for about 10 seconds, is it worth fighting this person in a political battle, right? Because I could have gone over his head. I had enough capital where I might have won, but he'd been there longer. And I'm like, not worth it. I'm done. Texted Olivia, said, I'm coming home. I quit. And so I came home. And this is a big story about, okay, what do you do when you do that, right? Unexpectedly, out of right field, what's going on? Well, you spend 2 days calling everybody you know saying you're retired, right? Your face hurts from smiling. And then on the third day, you wake up and you go, huh, it's Wednesday, 6:30 in the morning. I got nothing to do all day. Nobody wants to talk to me anymore because they're at work or getting ready to go to work. Why don't I document our story? And it didn't, the idea wasn't a book. It was just, I want to go relive that 15-year journey, because lots of twists and turns, certainly some luck along the way. We made some very good decisions that came back to be huge wins. And I just wanted to tie it together because, and this is the kind of the crux of the reasons, is when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I gave credit in the book, it changed my life. It didn't give you the how-to, and it didn't tell you, it talked about their first deal, the condo in Portland and the condo in Hawaii, but it didn't go, okay, what happened after that? So I was thinking, what if I wrote this as the complement to Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Somebody who took the inspiration, but then documented 15 full years, which, oh, by the way, happened to be through the highest of highs and the lowest of lows of the real estate market. That might be an interesting book. So that's what I did. And by the time I got done with 15 years, it was about 120 pages. So I'm like, oh, there actually might be a book here. And then I went back and added the next 60 or 80 with lessons learned and what we did after and things. And so that's the whys and the hows of the whole thing.
I love it. And you mentioned you wanted it to be a compliment. And that was something that I thought throughout the entire book was that, wow, there's so much mindset here. There's so many things that are teaching you different ways of thinking, but there was so many practical applications. Like I was taking notes every 2 seconds of, okay, here's a sign for this, or here's a strategy for that. And so it was so beneficial to have both those things in one book, because normally you have to go to two separate books for that. So it was
Yeah.
great that it was all in the same one. And you also mentioned something about reliving your journey.
Yeah.
You made a comment in the book towards the end that you didn't take the opportunity throughout the 15 years to look back and um, like congratulate yourselves on these successes and experience that. You're so busy with your head down pushing forward.
Yeah.
And that was something that I really took away from that. You know, we're still pretty early on and we're always moving from one deal to the next. And to read that, it made me really stop and think. So
Good.
tell me about how it was writing this book to be able to go back through the 15 years. Were you able to relive it all over again and feel the stress and the pain? And
I don't know that I felt stress or pain, but I certainly did. I relived the entire journey. I did go back and look at, because I had actually had a binder of deals that were closing so I could relive them. I tried to be as accurate as I could in time frame and dollars. And it was the first time I ever appreciated how far we came, which is might sound fun, but it is absolutely the truth, right? We went from a single house to over 170 units. And for the most part, when people ask, what do we have? It's like, I don't know, right? I mean, I only know that answer because I get asked it so many times, because literally it was just the next deal, the next deal, the next deal. Some of that's because we didn't property manage, so we didn't have to deal with the daily headaches. Yes, we answered phone calls and emails and all of that. But for the most part, my wife gets full credit for all of that kind of daily grind. I was securing capital and finding the next deal. So it was really the first time where I could go back and wow, that's, that was impressive, or that was a long journey, or you idiot, you should have celebrated more, right? You could have just had little moments where, I didn't even take a picture in front of any of the properties we bought. I mean, how silly is that? I mean, how cool would that be to have pictures from every house we bought or exchanged? I
that makes
just
me
didn't.
sad. That's like my favorite part is, yes, we get to take a picture in front of the house on closing day.
Yes,
If only you had Instagram 15 years ago, you probably would have been more likely to do that.
exactly. I would have had a social media presence and I could just go back to my feed.
So true. And then you also mentioned, quitting your job, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
What did it feel like having that option and knowing that all of the hard work you've put in for the last 15 years allowed you to quit your job somewhat rather, rapidly?
So again, I had always planned to 50. Every time I got asked by executives around me as I got promoted up the food chain, why are you still here? Because I was always open, right? People they never knew my net cash flow, but they knew it was enough, right? So they were asking, are you committed? Are you doing here? If we're going to give you this promotion and this new team, are you going to stay? They were always asking this question. So I got very good at answering, I'm going to stay here till I'm 50, but don't plan me to be here when I'm 51. So I had 5 years left, easy, right? And I knew this change was coming. I was ready to go have the conversation, but I expected it to be fine because in sales, you have difficult conversations all the time. This just went from bad to worse. And I remember it was literally a 10-second thing in my head as this idiot is saying something else stupid. I'm going, I'm out. I'm done. I'm going to leave this meeting in 5 minutes, and I'm going to go put my computer away, get a couple, just like one or two trinkets off my desk, and I'm walking out. And it was exhilarating to know that I had that capability. If you rewind, Olivia actually retired 5 years previous, but she was like, I can't get out of here soon enough, right? Me, I would have done my job for free, except for that idiot. Because I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved inspiring people and leading team to bigger and bigger heights. But alas, sometimes people are put in your way that you have to deal with. And I was so thrilled to get in my car in the parking lot, take a deep breath going, wow, I am really glad I don't have to suck it up and be nice to that person. So it was a good feeling.
Good feeling for sure. And, it also might have been the push that you needed because you read so much about people who work their whole lives to get to this point of retirement. And then whatever year they plan to do that, they're like, maybe one more year.
One more year. Yeah. That could have been me for sure. That absolutely could have. Yeah.
Especially because you liked your job,
yeah,
so.
Certainly could have. Yeah. It was, and once I got home, I was like, wow, I probably could have done this 2 years ago, but it was okay. I was happy. And, now it's been almost 2 years. Actually, what is today? Yeah, it's been almost 2 years. February 1st, it'll be 2 years. So pretty cool.
And do you feel like you're at a point now where you're not waking up on a Tuesday at 6:30 and you're like, huh, what am I going to do with the day?
Yeah, my day is pretty organized now. So I'm usually up by 6. My day is pretty organized. So I'm up by 6. I'm reading a bunch of finance stuff, which I would do most days anyway. I do my daily, millionaire news review for YouTube. Usually have an interview at 8 or 8:30. Then I'm off to the gym. I'm home, and then from 1 o'clock on, it's whatever Olivia wants to do. There will be occasions where I have a call at 4 o'clock, but very rarely I do anything YouTube or email related after 1. It's just her and I.
Mm-hmm. That's great that you have those boundaries. Okay, so we see where you're at now. We see what the 15 years has gotten you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back and talk about all the things that you talked about in the book. And there are so many points that I want to point out. So we'll see if you could get them all in. But
okay.
What I thought was so interesting is that, you're reading the book and you're learning about all the barriers you went through and all the challenges. And on page 24, you talk about how you had your kind of first not great success. You had to evict a tenant, you lost 3 months rent. And the book could have ended there. Had this big obstacle, decided real estate wasn't for me. That was our last deal. Closed book, chapter done. I'm going to stay in my full-time job.
Exactly.
And there are like 100 pages left. So he obviously has moved on. So I just thought that was a really big takeaway, that you had this huge, possibly career ending, if you will experience on page 24, and there's such a career afterwards. Yeah. So can you talk about that, how kind of early on in your investing career, you experienced a setback and you're able to get over it, and over time you obviously benefited from it. So
yeah, I'm glad you picked that up, because that was they talk about forks in the road or V's in the road or warning. That was a decision point. And honestly, I could sit here today and go back to that moment and having that first conversation with Olivia, and I'm like, I don't know which way this is going to go, right? Because she could have pulled the ripcord, right? You're in a committed relationship. You both have to be committed in this 100%. So to set this up, we spent a year looking for something, didn't find anything in our neck of the woods. Everything is too expensive. We find Fresno, a market neither of us have ever spent the night in. And at the time, we'd never been to except one drive to get to Yosemite, right? So we're choosing to put our hard-earned dollars to work in a market where we know no one, but the numbers work. So we do everything, at least we think we did everything right. And in hindsight, I think we did everything right. We found the property manager, we found the deal, we did a credit check, criminal check, reference checks, everything checks out. Unfortunately, there is no check, or at least I haven't heard of one, to talk about marital strife, right? They ended up getting divorce or separation the first month in our brand new, fully remodeled house. She takes off. We never hear from her again. And the husband decides that he is distraught and stops working. So not only does she leave, but he stops working, so he has no more income, or at least no income we can get at. And he decides to start destroying our house because he becomes an alcoholic, or a more of an alcoholic. And we're in California, so it's not like Texas where it's like a week and you get your property back. It was almost 3 months. And we get a $15,000 bill at the end, which we weren't not planning for. And I remember going, oh God, what did we just do? This is a market we don't know. I mean, it could have, just think of the things you could have said, right? This is your first experience. You did everything right. And now you're looking at your significant other, or even if it's yourself, going, I don't know, right? I don't know. And we decided it was a cost of doing business. It was a risk. We asked ourselves if we did everything right. We couldn't find something we did wrong. You always knew that was a possibility. It was so horrible that it happened in our first one. But we swallowed hard and we moved on. And that one house turned out to be really good thereafter, turned into a multi-unit property with a 1031 exchange. But again, we get that phone call. We go see it after they're finally out. We pay an attorney almost $1,000. It was just money on money that we hadn't planned on spending. And it could have crushed us. But again, that was one of the moments now that we look back on and go, wow, we've only had 2 stories like that. It's really horrible that it was our first tenant that, was kind of tragic like that. But this is a people business, and sometimes people are destructive.
Hmm. Do you feel that having that experience so early on kind of gave you the tough skin to deal with issues further down your career?
Well, I will tell you, it eventually became tough skin, but as with most injuries, it was raw for a long time. We were very nervous to pick up our phone every time we saw 559. Like, oh my God, another $1,000. Ah, but it turned out to be fine. But we were raw for a while. I mean, for a year or two, we were like, oh my God. Every time we saw the numbers, like, oh, not again, please, please. But again, we didn't have another story like that for over a decade. But yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, but I'm sure that pain had kind of stuck with you and maybe affected some other decisions down the road, like the, real estate crash.
Yeah.
That was a big thing that I took away from the book because, I'm a little younger still and just starting out in the real estate space.
Mhm.
And when that happens, I wasn't active in real estate, so I didn't experience it like other people have experienced it. So our actions are based on what we've gone through in the past year or two, and
Mhm.
we don't really know the cycles. So to hear someone's story who has gone through it and how they were able to turn what was a horrible situation into a potentially decent opportunity, great opportunity,
Oh yeah.
was really beneficial. So talk about that.
Yeah, so I think there's really two moments in that struggle. Oh, actually three, I guess, now that I think about it, that were important. First and foremost, we didn't know it was coming, right? We'd be lying to you to say that we'd be lying to say if we saw any crash coming, because at the time real estate went up forever, right? Because that's what it always did, right? That's what everybody said. Real estate never crashes or never goes down. We know that's now not true, but where step one of this is we never over leveraged. We were always conservative. We always made sure our properties cash flowed, not phantom Excel spreadsheet cash flow, but cash flow. Because my brain, my numbers brain wouldn't let me over leverage. And you got to remember, those first 6 or 7 years, I was surrounded by people calling me an idiot, right? Look at me, I'm doing, maximum leverage. I got a $2,000 check at closing, and I own a property. Aren't I a genius? And all of this stuff going on, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how this ends, but I don't want to be on that ride, because that. And then again, they're popping off because they sell it 2 years later and they made 50 grand, and I'm going, whoops, missed the boat on that one. So first off, we were always conservatively financed. We never deviated from that, which obviously saved us a ton. The next point is, again, we didn't know it was coming, but all I knew is we couldn't buy the next property, right? Because I always wanted to buy houses. So all I ever lived in, right? 3-bedroom, 2-bath, ideally with a garage, 1 story. But that first house we bought that we already talked about, we bought for 107. It was now going for over 260, but the rent never moved, right? So it doubled in value, almost 150%, but the rent never moved. I knew that was wrong. That's not supposed to happen. And it was because we went to a local RIA, a meetup, and somebody talked about small commercial, which again, I knew nothing about. So I looked at the numbers, and we were able to sell that first house, which is why it turned out so nice, for 263. And we moved the money into a 5-unit building, which we still own today, which was less. It rented for triple, and it cost roughly 50 grand less. I mean, do the math on that. So I'm a very simple person. If some is good, more is better. So we did that with all the houses, and we got out right before the crash. I think the last one we sold was like the month of the high. So we were sitting in multifamilies. Then the third thing is, when the crash came, the other advantage we took is we kept buying, right? Because we were in the market every day. And that's, if you're in this business, you have to be in it every day, because markets will change and shift on you. So we started buying stuff, still getting a couple of bank loans as the market was getting down, but then the banks shut off, which I didn't know was possible, right? We had 800 credit scores, 7 figures, 7-figure net worth, 6-figure income, 800 credit score, and the down payment. And the bank said no. We're like, huh? Can you say no? It turns out they can say no. So that's where we found hard money and private money, and we just kept buying hand over fist. And all those people that I talked about in phase 1 that made me look stupid lost everything and then some. So I am perhaps too conservative as I talk to people, but they are well-earned scars that I carry proudly, and I don't want to see people go through it, because I saw people get divorced. One person committed suicide over it, and it can be tragic when the dominoes start falling.
Definitely. And it is kind of a slippery slope. And so there's two kind of things that within that I want to point out, and these are themes that were going out through the book, is it's very popular right now to burr properties and pull out as much as you can and move on to the next deal. And that's great. But as you said, everyone's a genius in a, rising market. And of course it's going to work in that cycle, but what are you going to do when it turns and it's going to, maybe to not such an extent, but it's going to at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really great reminder when I was reading it. And then the other thing that I noticed throughout the entire book was it was constantly a problem and how you solved it.
Yes.
And a problem and how you solved it, and a problem and how you solved it. And it was great to see how resilient you moved from one thing to another for 15 years, and I feel you see a lot of people who are like, I know, they're aware that the buy and hold process is not get rich quick.
Yeah.
But they do still think that, in a couple years, I'm going to have 1 million properties and it's all going to be great. And it was so beneficial to see this long but steady and solid process work out over 15 years. That's very possible for people. I mean, you give all of the details. You're very transparent. There are numbers, there are percentages, there's cash flow. You talk money and sales price and everything. Yep. And all the details are there. And I think that's what most people starting out really want is, they already got the mindset. They read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They know this is what they want to do and this is the smart thing to do. But how are you actually doing it? And I think that's what you laid out really nicely throughout the entire book.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that, because that was my number one goal was to outline the path that we did, the good and the bad, right? Mm-hmm. And talk about the struggles we went through and how we got through them or over them or by them. So cool.
Mm-hmm. It's so easy to, show your refi check or show your rent check, but it's not so easy to show the money you lost, the hits you took.
Yeah.
So super appreciative of that. Awesome. And another theme that I saw going through the entire book, which you mentioned, was staying engaged. Even when you guys weren't buying, you were constantly staying engaged in the market, because if you are not going to know what is a good deal. Is the market changing? So talk more about that, because that was one of the things I found so fascinating. It's so easy to say, okay, we're going to take a break and not look at the market. Yeah,
I think that's a huge mistake. And I'll just say it again. Because that's what a lot of people do. They I work, save, buy something, and then I'm going to take a break. Or they tell themselves, I'm going to go keep grinding and save up the next down payment, which I don't agree with any of that. But you have to stay engaged in the market, because you need the market, no matter where you are, has a rhythm. And Olivia very rarely looked. I looked every day for 10 years because that was my job, right? Finding the deal was my number one job. And over time, you could just see what was selling faster, what wasn't, what was coming back on, what was falling out, what were the price jumps. Because again, that's the business that we're in, is buy and hold. Because there are 99% of the properties on the market today are not good or great deals. My number one job, and the only job I talk about, is I'm trying to weed out and find good and great deals. If all I do is good and great deals over your 15-year journey or 10 years or 5 years or whatever your journey time frame is, your chances of success go through the roof. If you just go on and go, I'm going to pick property number 17, it's like going to the roulette table and betting on 17. Maybe it might work, probably won't, but it might. So that, I really do believe you have to stay engaged. And then the other thing is, on more than one occasion, we found what I call the deal of the year by staying engaged. And when you find the deal of the year, you'll find the money. I mean, I remember taking a 401k loan. I remember mortgaging my car, which was paid off one time. Right? When you find a deal of the year, and you'll know, if you're engaged, you'll know it's the deal of the year because it jumps off the page. So you got to stay engaged. It's my number one rule.
And I think staying engaged really helps with confidence as well, because as you mentioned earlier, when it's kind of just you or you and your spouse or you and your partner, and you're faced with a problem or a question, you're not really sure who you could ask to answer that for you. And so it's hard to make the decision. Yeah. And so if you do kind of stay engaged, it gives you a little bit more of that confidence to make those decisions, because you're like, well, no, I've done my homework for the past, X amount of months. I know this is a good deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. And this is being in real estate, if you're going to be a landlord and buy one or two properties, it might not be a confidence game. But if you're going to be in the business like we are, like both of us, it is a confidence game. You have to have the shield or the callus or whatever you want to call it that says, no, I am confident in my decision. We are going to make this our next step, because you're playing chess. You're not playing checkers, right? So that's a very astute observation.
Mm-hmm. And the next step thing is always so interesting, because one of the great things about real estate is there are so many ways and so many different avenues you could go down. But I also find that's one of the worst things about real estate is that there are so many options. Yes. It's just trying to decide one and then sticking to that and moving down that path.
Yeah, that's a unique, if I ever give myself any credit, I have the ability to focus, and I call it tunnel vision. Everything, I mean, yeah, I know it's out there, wholesaling and flipping and, land contracts and lease options and all that stuff's out there. But no, this is what we do, right? We are simply buy and hold investors. In theory, we're buying forever. And I do have that I give myself credit for that, is I can stay myopically focused, which, is helpful for sure.
Well, and it's good to be aware of that too. Kind of like knowing your genius and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and then you can play up those.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
One of the things that you speak about, even just in this interview, is you kind of say we, or you mention Olivia, and that's something you touch on in the book. It's kind of having spouse buy-in or partner buy-in, and the importance of that, because you can do it a lot on your own, but having that support and making sure somebody's on board with all the ups and downs is important too.
Yeah, it's perhaps the number one, I tried to make it the number one credit in the book was she and I were in this together 100%, because if you're not, and I don't know if I put it in the book, but I say it a lot of time in speeches, if your spouse is 99% on board, she's not on board, right? I'm saying she because I'm the guy talking about it. The significant others, they're not on board because of that first story you brought up, right? If they're 99% on board and your first tenant destroys your property, doesn't pay you rent, what are they going to say when you go into that property? Because you saw it beautiful, and then 4 months later, there are literally wine bottles in the wall. He made his own wine rack out of my drywall. What is he or she going to say? And if they're 99% on board, that conversation's not going to be fun. If they are 100% on board, it's going to be, well, that sucked. Let's take a picture in front of that now. I wish I had Instagram for that. That would have been fun. But I'm very keen on that. They 100% have the conversation. Tell my horrible story and ask them what they would do, right? Suffer my pain and see what happens.
Do you feel going through all of this and having goals and going through this whole process has strengthened your relationship?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you want to have difficult conversations, right? Talk about an additional $15,000 expense in a new entity where you have our daughter Teresa was probably 8 or 9 at the time. Yeah, I mean, we didn't have the money. We certainly didn't budget it for that, right? We had $40,000 when we started, and we had this unexpected $15K expense. 6 months in, it was bad. It was very, very bad. But yeah, we're back. Yeah, shake it off, take it off.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's definitely so important. And another thing that you kind of pointed out was that while it's important to do your research and be educated and have an idea of what you're doing before you start, you also mentioned that it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to not have the website and the business cards and the direct mail campaign and the Bandit signs. And I love that you pointed that out. So tell us about the importance of, maybe not having it all completely together. Yeah,
I think that's a big thing. And it's probably even more important today, right? 15 years ago, the internet was around, but the social media wasn't, right? So if you wanted to talk real estate, you really had to go to a real estate meetup. Today, right, I just turn on my phone and my phone blows up with real estate stuff. It was very different back then. And maybe that was a good thing, because it was very easy to say, okay, I'm going to be a buy and hold investor. I picked my market. I know my asset type, 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses. Now it's put up or shut up. That's really where we came to, right? We drove down there. We finally saw a house. It met our numbers. And we were driving back, and Olivia, again, full credit, goes, are we going to write an offer or not? If you don't write an offer, I'm not coming back. I'm like, all right, well, let me pull over, call the agent. Let's write an offer, because I don't know what else to do. I got no more other boxes to check. So yeah, we didn't have business cards. We didn't have a website. We just knew what we wanted to do. And the next step was to write the offer. And they said yes. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Analysis paralysis is real. You just think that you're going to read another book, you're going to meet another person, you're going to, do that one more thing on your checklist, and it's going to make you that much more prepared. But really, it just kind of prolongs. Oh yeah. Again, think about it, right? We never lived in Fresno. I knew absolutely nobody in Fresno. I could have killed myself seeking out metrics. What's the population? What's the income? What's the net change of X and Y and Z? No, the house was $107,000. It rented for $1,100. It hit my rule. Fresno was more than 100,000 people. It was actually 500,000 people. That was it for me, right? Is the market big enough? And does it hit my metrics for purchase?
And then the only answer is yes. I didn't care. People ask me all the time, well, what metrics did you look at? I'm like, I wish I could tell you I looked at employment or average education or no, I didn't look at any of that stuff. It was rent, purchase price, big enough market. And that was maybe too simple, but it worked out okay.
But simple is good, especially when you're first starting out, because you're just going to get caught up in everything. And,
Yeah.
your first property, while you definitely want it to be a good deal, it really is the foundational education piece.
Oh, good point.
So it helps propel you for future deals.
That's a good point, because very quickly thereafter, once we got that deal done, we finally got over that headache. My only goal with the next purchase was to make the second one better than the first one, and then the third one better than the second one. And I did that all the way up to property 8, which is why we were stuck, because I couldn't pay $260 for an 1100. And I'm like, I just can't do it. I mean, how can the 9th property be the worst of all of them? Lo and behold, RIA, meeting, multifamily. Good deal. So
you talk about multifamily a lot, and you mentioned 1031 exchange. And that was a very pivotal part of your investing career, because that really took you from small single family assets to the things that really increase your cash flow.
Sure. Yeah, we went from 8 to 80. And frankly, we did a lot of damage, and we did a lot of great stuff during the crash. But if we don't do that 1031 transition, I'm not retired today. Just think, I mean, if we just had those 8 houses, we would have kept them all because they were financed fine. They probably 6 of the 8 probably would have cash flowed the whole time. 2 of them were kind of close. When rents got soft, we may have been break even, but we wouldn't have lost any. But we wouldn't have been able to retire, right? We couldn't replace a 6-figure income on houses making $200 to $400 each. Certainly couldn't replace 2 6-figure incomes. And that 1031 transition. The other thing I learned that's kind of subtle there is I believe multifamily, small multifamily and single family homes have different cycles. In 2008, single family homes were ridiculously valued. Multifamily was cheap, like ridiculously cheap. Today, if you ask me, and I'm pretty clear on this, I think small multifamilies are ridiculously expensive, but housing is cheap, especially when you calculate debt, right? I was buying in 03 to 06 with 6, 7, 8% interest. Today, it's 3 or 4. I mean, houses are, in my opinion, do the math, but houses are a better investment today. I'd be loading up on houses. I actually sold an apartment in 1031 into a bunch of houses here recently. So you can go the other direction, and we did. So pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. I didn't know that you could do that technically.
Yeah, you can. You just have to make it big. So it went from 1 multifamily to 6 houses, because the total 1031 value has to be bigger than what you're exiting out of. But yeah, we went out of an 18-unit building into someone's portfolio, and the portfolio was more expensive than the 18-unit, and it worked out. Yep, it was good.
There was definitely a lot of warning in this book too, which was super beneficial. You definitely included all of the highs and the benefits of real estate investing, but you definitely made sure that people were conservative. And you brought up this term very often, alligator properties. Surprised it hasn't come up yet.
Yeah, that was the big thing. I take credit for very few things, but you always hear people talk about negative cash flow. And they blow it off. And I think I wrote it in the book. I remember a friend who was an executive in a company I worked at. He took me in his office and he talked about buying properties in Louisiana or Texas or somewhere. And he goes, look, I can afford 8 negative cash flow properties. I'm like, and you think this is a good idea? Why? Well, they're going to appreciate, and I'm going to be able to take
bragging rights.
Yeah. I'm like, when was it okay to, if you want to burn $1,000 a month, freaking hand it to me and I'll light it on fire for you, right? What are you doing? But, he was convinced, and he was an executive, and, blah, blah, blah. And so that's where the alligator came from, because the long story short is he bought during the peak and he lost them all and lost some other stuff. And so I created this alligator story based on that experience with him, because negative cash flow is not painful enough. I want an alligator, and I think I put the logo in the book, eating bags of money. So every month you have to write a check that's bigger than your income. You are, an alligator is eating your money. So yes, no alligators ever. But that's also refinancing. And that's a mistake I made. I assumed a bank would be conservative. So I took my first house and did a cash out refi, and I didn't run the numbers. I assumed the bank would. Wrong. They gave me like 40 grand or whatever it was. And then, but when I got my first statement, I'm like, shoot, I gotta take money out of my bank to pay this. What happened? It's because we overfinanced it. And the bank took my nice income from my job and said, well, he'll be able to cover it. I'll never do that again. That's not why I'm building a portfolio to collect alligators.
Yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Bingo. There you go. Well said.
So while you're writing this book, you obviously filled it with a lot of good nuggets. What are the three or, the few top things that you were hoping that readers were really going to pull out of it?
So first off, I hoped people would see a journey that was feasible. I believe too many people, especially in the social media age, get stuck with the big checks, the wholesale, the refi, lying, frankly. I think some of these checks are bold-faced lies. I wanted them to see that a buy and hold strategy could work. Now, it's very clear. It took us 15 years. It's right in the title. But it's a pretty nice ending if you're willing to do that. So I wanted people to understand that if Rich Dad Poor Dad changed your life, that here's somebody that took that inspiration and went all in. And this is how it worked out. We'll see what happens. So that's one. Two was, and we talked a little bit about it earlier, being conservative is okay. Real estate is one of those things that goes through cycles. Sometimes it's high leverage. It just makes me vibrate at a different level. It's like, I just get so nervous because if you're in it for 90 days, it's a quick flip and you want to do 110% financing and get someone else to do it. That could work. Like Burr is the topic du jour today. That works great in a rising market. I already know because I get emails and comments from folks that there are Burr strategies burning up all over the place. And it's painful. And I don't like seeing that for folks. And I think it's criminal that people are, who Burr worked the last 5 years now are making more money selling books on Burr, knowing full well that they couldn't Burr at the same rate today. I think that's not good karma. So I just want to give it out, the good and the bad that we did there. And then the last thing is, you can be a full-time employee and be a landlord. There's too much, the rise and grind and, the hustle and all of that. I worked 7 to 7 in a job that took me all over the world. And I still found time to look every day for 10 years. And so it is possible. And I was married. was raising a daughter, right? Sure, your life might be more complex than mine, but we're probably pretty close. So those are the three things for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you pointed that out. There's definitely a lot of relatable pieces. You live in California, right? So that's a market where people assume you can't invest because the homes are so expensive. But you found a market. You show in the book how to kind of find a market. And you worked full time. That was another barrier you had to get over. So it's a lot of relatable pieces.
Yeah. I'm glad. That means a lot. I'm glad you're smiling when you say that. That's wonderful.
So you went through all of that. You wrote the book. You're doing this podcast. What are you doing moving forward?
Oh, that's good. So I am simply trying to help people going forward. My big goal, I have 2 goals now going forward, is I want to help 1,000 people change their financial future. And I want to create something that outlives me by 100 years. Right. So the book should survive long past me. The YouTube channel I have, the videos won't disappear. And then I just bought an office building in Fresno called The Hub, where I've staffed it with real estate entrepreneurs that I know and trust, general contractors, agents, because I think real estate is too bifurcated and there's too many people out there with their little umbrellas. And I'm like, no, I'm going to take 9 independent companies, stick them together and see if we can't collaborate and do some cool stuff. So that's what we're doing. And again, I'm going to spend most of my day trying to make Olivia happy. Right. So
I love that. Oh, so pure.
Yeah, I'm trying.
So where can people learn all of these life lessons and where can they buy the book?
So go to Amazon, on Amazon. The other thing I'm proud of with Amazon, again, 1 year today, is there's over 100 5-star reviews. So if you've bought the book and you've seen this, go there and write your review, leave a 5-star review. I'd like it. Something else people usually do is they take selfies with the book and they send them to me. That's always fun. It makes me smile. It is on Kindle, Kindle, and it is coming on Audible.
That's awesome.
It will be an Audible book. I was hoping to get it done today, but they had a problem with the the image. So it's going back through quality control. So it should be, cross fingers, this month available on Audible, which was harder and more expensive than I thought, but it will be on Audible this month.
And you narrated that?
I did not. I tried to, but they didn't. They
didn't like your voice?
No, they warned me that, no, you might want to pay someone. I'm like, okay, I'll pay someone.
Oh, interesting. I feel like hearing you kind of go through all the different points in the journey would have been awesome.
Yeah, I thought that way too, but they recommended that it would take a lot longer given how I talk and my intonations. And anyways, they said yeah, exactly. They said, well, do you want it done this year or next year? I'm like, got it. Okay. Check. I'll pay someone. Yeah. And then the last thing is you go to YouTube. Everything I do is one rental at a time. So go to YouTube, one rental at a time, hit the subscribe button. We're up over 4,200 subscribers now. I put out daily content. It's again, what I do usually from 7 to 9 o'clock. And I'm going to keep doing that until I don't have fun doing it. And if I go 2 days in a row with no content, it's because I'm not having any fun anymore. That'll be a signal. But
good to know. Good to know. Oh, well, we love that you keep pumping it out. It's such valuable stuff.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much. All right. Well, is that it? You done? Oh,
that's
Lauren.
That's it.
Lauren, that was so much fun. Once again, exceeded my expectations. I actually got goosebumps kind of thinking about your questions and how we walked through that. So that means a lot that you were able to do that. Thank you for reading it, and keep doing what you're doing. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, I appreciate it. We will. I highly suggest everyone read the book. I found it super beneficial. Like I said, I read it twice. And when it comes out on Audible, I will probably listen to it.
Wow. Very cool. Well, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
All right.